I was an employee at Cedar Island Ranch for roughly 3 months from the end of September 2022 until about 5 to 6 days ago. I believe it's the 18th, December 18th, 2022. One thing I wanted to get out of the way, I'll be making a series of videos talking about the issues at that ranch with the owners, with management, so on and so forth. One thing I really wanted to get out of the way was I was one of the barn workers. It was myself, Jorge Camacho Rivera, who told me himself was an illegal immigrant, who many times had paid coyotes to bring him across the border. Who's, I was told, is 44 years old. He's from central Mexico, I believe the state of Zacatecas. And it was pretty much just he and I that were the only two adults running that barn, working in that barn for the bulk of the time that I was there. We did receive some help from a 16-year-old teenage boy named Quinn. He would come in after school and help us muck the stalls. And then there was a barn manager named Jeremy Edwards, who was not there for most of the time. I worked with him for about the first week that I was there. And then he went on roughly a 3-month vacation. He's scheduled to come back to Cedar Island soon, actually. I think in about between a week and 2 weeks. Jorge Camacho Rivera told me many things while we were working. We chatted a lot while we were both in the horse stalls scooping the horse shit. I wasn't up for chatting much at first, but he just started telling me all this stuff about himself and then started pressing me for information about myself. And in that way, I thought that we were building a friendship. We'll get into that more. Let's get to the focus, to the point, Kat. Jorge Camacho Rivera, again, he's an illegal immigrant. He told me a lot about the owners of the resort ranch. As far as I know, one of the owners is named David Saint Sing, Saintsing, from Thomasville, North Carolina. He seems to be a millionaire or have access to millions of dollars worth of resources. I believe the other owner is Jeff Krumsick. And then their HR manager, who a lot of the employees seem to think is also an owner, is named Elaine Crowell. Jorge told me at one point in the barn that the phone he was using had been lent to him by David, the owner, for an extended period of time. He'd had it for a while. He must have gotten it after the summer, because I noticed, I'll make another video when I'm more settled, sat down somewhere. Just wanted to stop and make this one real quick, get some information out there that's very pertinent. But I'll make another video showing evidence I have and stuff. But I found all kinds of messages on the communication platform that the company uses, called Slack, Slack. It's sort of a platform where you can direct message other employees, other coworkers. You can also post in these sort of community forums that are dedicated to different parts of the ranch. So, for example, there is a forum in there that's dedicated to everything to do with the motel. There is another forum in there that's dedicated to everything to do with the stables or the barn. I believe it's called stables, though. What I noticed is, first of all, I had to help Jorge get onto Slack. He didn't know what he was doing. And I was given instructions by the barn manager, Jeremy, before he left for his vacation, that I was to be the one to do all the communication between the barn and the rest of the resort online on Slack. So, for example, if the barn was in need of some kind of supplies, I needed to post it on Slack in the stables forum. Hey, guys, we need this. And then other people, like the people in the main office or the owners, whoever, will see that message and take care of it and make sure we get it. So if we ran out of hydrogen peroxide, I put in an order for hydrogen peroxide for the barn, for example. It's one order I've made of many, a few at least, a handful of orders I made in the 3 months I was there. We're going to get into that in another video. I was the one who had to do that because I was told Jorge didn't know what the F he was doing, and I believe that when it came to like getting himself signed up onto a platform, an app like Slack. Because I had to show him how to do it on his phone. And he told me that phone that he was using was not his phone. It was David's phone. He said David had lent it to him for a while to use while he was there. He also told me that David had already in the past demanded of him that he show him the phone so that David could look at his communications with other employees. And of course, because Jorge is an illegal immigrant from Mexico, of course he's going to comply. Because he knows that David could really mess him up in a lot of ways if he refuses. So yeah, Jorge already told me that in the barn. Then, I got just adopted, or well, took on the road with me a couple of kittens, like six-week-old kittens that were not doing well where they were, and they're scratching me up a bit as I'm trying to like get them out of nooks and crannies that they hide themselves in because they're getting used to the RV still. They were flea infested when I got them. I gave them a flea bath, but they needed to be adopted. Poor babies. Hi, honey. So that is committing acts of espionage. That's violating the human rights of illegal immigrants to commit acts of espionage against American citizens. Because David couldn't go to any of his employees that are American citizens and demand to see their phone so that he can look at the texts that they've been exchanging with other employees. That would be a violation of human rights. And American citizens would be like, I'm going to take you to court for that shit. He can't do that. So what he does is he hires illegal immigrants because it serves many purposes for him. First of all, they're cheap labor. And David admitted to me himself, to my face, when he was firing me, that he is cheap and that's how he has his money. But also, the purpose it serves is that illegal immigrants, unfortunately, because of the circumstances that they're in, are very easy to take advantage of if you're of a mind to do so. Seems to me that David St. Sing is of a mind to do so. Doesn't seem to me, it's been told to me by one of my coworkers, who I'm not sure if he's back in Mexico or he was picked up by immigration before he got back there. I don't know. What I do know is that I worked with a man who was, by his accounting, 44 years old and from central Mexico, and by the accounting of a few other people, like Jeremy Edwards. And his name, he even wrote it out for me at one point. His name is Jorge Camacho Rivera. JorgeCamachorivera. In case anyone was unclear on the spelling. told me himself that David Saintsing from Thomasville, North Carolina, has been demanding to see his phone so that he can read over the texts and communications between Jorge and his coworkers, his American citizen coworkers. Because that's the only way that David could spy on his American citizen on employees. Well, not legal, it's not legal. But possibly get away with it, you know. Too bad for him, he's not going to. Well, it's not really too bad. It's a good thing. He shouldn't be getting away with it. He should be sitting in a prison cell for committing acts of espionage against American citizens and violating the human rights of immigrants. I don't mind immigrants coming over here and picking up superfluous work and seeking a better life for themselves and sending money home to their families. I respected that about Jorge. What I do mind is if they come over here and pretend to be your friend and the whole time they're gathering information to have you sabotaged because they want your job freed up for their family and friends to come over from Mexico and take. And it seems to me that's what Jorge was doing. It was a I'll rub your back, you rub mine kind of a deal, it seems, between Jorge and David. I'm of the very strong suspicion that I was only ever meant to work in that barn for about 3 months. For the 3 months that Jeremy Edwards, the barn manager, was going to be away on vacation. Because they would need at least one American citizen working in that barn. Why? Because they can't just have an illegal immigrant, Jorge, running that barn. They can't. Or they can't have it appear that way. That's how it was. They can't have it appear that way. Legally, that's no bueno. Because it's not just a barn where we keep horses. We take those horses out on rides on the beach. We take riders out. People pay to come there and ride horses out on this beautiful scenic trail out on a beach. Any number of things can go wrong out there with those horses or in the barn with the horses. People could get killed or seriously injured. If it ever were to come to that and there were any legal issues brought up, it wouldn't do for the owners, for David Saintsing, to admit in a court of law or in any official manner that they are both A, hiring illegal immigrants to do cheaper work and pushing out locals that are just as qualified and have no work and are desperate for ways to feed their families. It wouldn't do to A, be hiring illegal immigrants, and B, to be placing them in charge of an entire barn with horses and other employees and so on and so forth. Legally, that probably wouldn't go over so well in the United States of America. They would probably be found very liable if a rider had been injured. And that's exactly what the setup was when I was working there. In fact, Jeremy Edwards, before he left on his vacation, called a big meeting in the front office. Not the barn office, the main office. And stood there in the office with a lot of us standing around and had Elaine, the HR manager, on speakerphone, on his phone. And announced to all of us that he's the barn manager, he's in charge of the barn. And while he's away on vacation, Jorge is his representative in that barn. And we were all to follow Jorge's orders as if they were Jeremy's orders. I was placed below Jorge on the chain of command in the hierarchy, which actually I didn't 100% disagree with because, citizen or not, he had more experience with the horses. I agreed with him telling me what to do, and I agreed with him getting better pay. I hope he did. Well, for the fact that he had far more experience, he's far more qualified. Yes, he worked on, according to him, worked on the racetracks down in Mexico, or worked with the horses in the racetracks. What I do have a problem with is the backstabbing and the sabotage. So David wanted someone there to fill in the gap for 3 months, an American citizen. So if something went wrong, they could whisk Jorge off to Mexico or another one of their resort locations, like out at High Point, North Carolina. Essentially make Jorge disappear from the public eye or the government eye. And then guess who would have been the patsy guy to take the fall? Because it was just Jorge and I, and then a 16-year-old boy named Quinn once in a while coming in and mucking. When he wasn't too lazy, and sometimes just not even show up. He's a 16-year-old boy. I gave him every credit I could. And he seemed like a good kid, actually. But he's 16, so you know how it is. So yeah, I would have been taking the fall for that if there had been an issue. But David told me himself when he was firing me that he's cheap. So cheap, I suspect, that he's willing to hire someone on under false pretenses, with promises that it is going to be a long-term position, job, which is what I was looking for, something I could settle down into so I wouldn't have to bounce around so much. And then, even though he knows from the very beginning, he only intends to have them working there for a few months. Because David, it's a small RV park, right, with a barn near it. And a lot of times people come there to camp over the weekend. They'll do a bit of hunting, they'll do a bit of kayaking, fishing, and maybe ride some horses out on the beach. There's a motel there too, a little motel. The pay I got started off at $12 an hour. I think they might have bumped it up to $13 an hour because of the management changeover fiasco or whatever. But included in my pay was I got a free lot in the RV park to park up my rig on, my RV, with full hookups and everything. So that's rent and utilities in the pay. Sweet deal. However, David could be making way more if those lots in the RV park are empty and he can have them open to be booked by tourists. He can charge a substantial price every night. So he's going to try to keep as many of those lots vacant as possible. He doesn't want too many employees taking up those lots. So, he'd prefer, and then he has to pay the American citizen employees more money than he would typically have to pay the illegal immigrants. He can pay them not so much. And they'll be satisfied. Jorge told me himself that that they still owed him about $5,000. He told me, like, the week leading up to him being scheduled to go back to Mexico. He's going back for only a few months to visit with his family, is what he said. And then he's going to try to come back and then bring his son back with him. Another illegal immigrant he's going to try to bring back with him. Maybe take my job that he just had me fired from. I was told by David himself that Jorge had been complaining about me for over a month. While he was pretending to be my friend. Anyway, so yeah. So David wants as few employees taking up those RV lots as possible so he can get money out of them. He'd much rather be paying illegal immigrants less money per hour and possibly even withhold their money from them, because Jorge still hadn't gotten his like $5,000 he was owed. Last I heard from him about that whole thing, and when I was like, do you trust them to give it to you before you leave? And he was like, yeah. I'm not sure what happened to him or what happened if he got his money, but they owed him like for just back pay like for a long while. And I think he was, for the most part, in a lot of ways, he's living off of tips and stuff he was making from taking rides out. And he was the main guide for the rides. I never took a ride out on my own. I was told by Jeremy Edwards, the barn manager, that he would train me up properly to be a good proper rider when he got back from vacation. I didn't feel comfortable. I'm a fairly good rider, but I didn't feel comfortable with, and I made this clear before I even accepted the job. I spent most of my adult career as an artist and art teacher. I worked with horses and took riding lessons and such when I was a kid up till 19. So I never claimed to be an expert. Never claimed it. But I was told, that's all right, you'll get training. I barely went out on rides with Jorge. He took most of the rides out. He took all the rides out that I was there. He took all of them out. Nobody else took rides out. I occasionally went out with him, but I never took one out on my own. I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I didn't feel like a good enough rider, and I didn't want to put the lives of people at risk. So I was like, I'm perfectly happy just working in the barn, at least for now, maintaining it, cleaning it, mucking stalls, being on top of water troughs, feeding them, so on and so forth. And going out on a ride once in a while, if you feel like you have the extra time and attention span, to deal with sort of babysitting an apprentice guide along with the riders. But again, I was promised by Jeremy Edwards that I would be trained by him when he returned from vacation, and that all I need to do is focus on my duties, mucking the stalls and feeding the horses and such in the barn. The illegal immigrants that David uses for his resort locations, he has another resort up in High Point, North Carolina. I've seen when they're down at the Cedar Island Ranch location, they get packed into a bunkhouse out back behind the post office, Babe Reed's restaurant area. And Jorge he lived in there. I lived in my RV in my lot. So yeah, why wouldn't David, Mr. Cheapskate, lie to American citizens and spy on them so he can find reasons to fire them when he wants them fired because they've served their purpose for him. And he doesn't want them taking up RV lots in his RV park. And he doesn't want to have to pay them a few extra dollars per hour. And he can then be more controlling and sinister with the illegal immigrants. Use them for espionage. Take advantage of them, violate their human rights, pack them like sardines into a bunkhouse. Cheap. So yeah, I just want to get that out there. Okay, David Saintsing, the disgusting little bearded toad from Thomasville, North Carolina. He violates the human rights of illegal immigrants so that he can engage in acts of espionage against United States citizens. I'm a citizen. I was born and raised in New Jersey. I'm also a Mayflower descendant through my dad's side. I'm a descendant of John Howland through his oldest daughter, Desiree. My family is one of the first people to go down and settle the southern part of New Jersey. By settle, I guess I mean probably take it away from the natives who already lived there, if I'm being perfectly realistic and honest about it. My apologies, but still. Other than, people who can trace their lineage back to the native tribes that were first here, my lineage is about as old as it gets in America. As in, I'm really citizen. There's still a lima bean festival in my hometown in Cape May, New Jersey, because my family owned a substantial chunk of the southern peninsula of New Jersey. No longer, but they did once. And grew lima beans and had a dairy farm, and lima beans were one of the main exports from that area. So my family's been established in this country for a good long while. And on my mom's side of the family, my grandfather, my mom's father, came over as an 11-year-old with his mother from France, eastern France, because my family on my mother's side fought in the French underground resistance against the Nazi soldiers during World War II, and many of my family members were murdered, and everything was stolen by Germans. And when the war ended, my great-grandmother had been widowed and remarried an American soldier who moved she and my grandfather over here stateside. So I think on my mom's side of the family, we kind of earned our citizenship over here too. Dying, fighting as spies against Nazis. And this is how David Saint Singh treats those bloodlines, those lineages. And I went to the Petty School in Hightstown, New Jersey. It's one of the best prep schools, one of the best educations that this country has to offer. I have to refresh my memory on what the school motto was. I do remember that roughly translated from Latin, it came out to mean something along the lines of, we work all day and then work some more. I was a lifer there, as in I put in 5 years, 8th through 12th. It was extremely academically rigorous. We had school on Saturdays. You did not survive that school if you were lazy or incompetent or stupid. So I'm a hard worker. I do the very best I can. I don't think you should half-ass your life. I think that's a mistake. I think whatever you're doing, you do the very best you can at it. I twisted myself inside out to make myself good at that job and for that job. And in no small way, because I loved that area. I loved the community. It was beautiful there. And I was of a mind to settle there for a good long while. If not, maybe the rest of my life. I don't know. I was really considering it for a bit. Until it started to feel like something was up. And I was getting messed around with. And now it's become clear. Jorge was fishing around for reasons, ways to get me fired. And I think he was trying to mess with me psychologically. Bringing up stuff he knew I didn't really want to talk about. I'd shut down before. I'd already explained certain situations to him and things that was like, why are you still bringing it up, dude? And perhaps I didn't realize it at the time, but now I realize he's probably trying to trigger me, make me even more upset, even though, things had happened. Like also my cat suddenly died out back behind the barn, supposedly attacked by coyotes, even though coyotes don't typically come so close to the back of a barn that's just had a bunch of people in it, and a horse out back being walked around, and it's got bright lights on the inside and a big floodlight that stays on all night out back, and there's lots of dune area and marsh area and wooded area for them to hunt in. Why would they ever risk coming so close to the back of that barn? Jorge told me himself he hated cats. He's the one who told me he heard sounded like my cat getting attacked out back behind the barn the night she went missing. He was in there maybe about 20, 30 minutes past when I left. He called me in late after hours because there was a sick horse. Told me I had to be there. My cats follow me all around that island, and I hadn't had the chance because I was caught off guard to scoop them up and put them in the RV for the night. I let them out during the day, and they go back in at night. So because I was taken off my typical schedule with my cats, they followed me a few yards over to the barn. They were hanging out behind the barn waiting for me to finish, helping take care of one of the sick horses who I was walking around a mounting block out back behind the barn. He had colic. And walking them around helps them work that stuff through their digestive system. Colic, sorry, I'm getting parched, is a blockage in their digestive system. It leads to it. It could kill them. One of the things that helps them is you help walk them around anywhere. It helps get stuff going in there. So I was doing that for about an hour and telling my cats they were hanging out right around there, like, go back to the RV. I'll be right there. And did that again as I was leaving. Jorge said, go on, I'm going to stay a little bit longer. Met my boy cat back at the RV. I saw him turning to leave. Go back around the side of the barn when I put my head out back behind the barn and said, hey, I'm going, come on, let's go to the RV. And he met me back there, a few yards away. I didn't see my girl cat when I was leaving. I assumed she was like kind of looking for something right out back around there. And I never saw her again. I found a couple patches of little patches of her fur. Only a few yards behind the barn. That's why I'm like, it doesn't make sense. So she would have been attacked. The only thing that would have attacked her out there would have been a coyote, naturally, unless, of course, it was a human being person. Well, a creature that looks like a person. Maybe one who hated cats and was trying to get me to quit the job, trying to get me unstable, very sad and upset. I went after she went missing, and it looked like and when he was very insistent, like, why don't you just let it go? Just forget about it. Move on. Like I lost a quarter or something. So I had to say to him, please stop telling me to not be a woman or a mother. That kitten's my baby. Moms don't give up on their babies, at least not right away. They hold out hope for a while, at least. I went searching around that island and through those dunes for days and days, calling for her. I saw tracks. It's weird because it was like, first I thought, coyotes? Some of them were dog tracks, not coyotes. Pet dog tracks, and they were like fresh, and they were fresh as if my kitten was there too. Something felt really off and wrong about what became of my cat. Like somebody did something to my cat. Nothing natural happened to her, like she was attacked by something. And it started to feel like the entire island was getting together in lies to try to convince me, no. She's just on the other side of the island. She's hunting. She'll come back when she feels like it. Like, no, that's not my cat. My cats follow me all around this island. And when I call to them, they come running from across the island because they know. I know my cats. I'm almost 40 years old and they know me and I'm their mama. And they know that the only thing they have to expect when they hear me calling are pets or treats, you know? Oh, mama's going to give us some pets and or some treats, likely both. So they always come a running. The only exception to that is if they're in the middle of the hunt. Like if they're in the zone catching a mouse or something. But then it's like they'll be there in about 20 to 30 minutes. Anyway, this is already longer than I expected or wanted it to be. I just want to get this one out of the way. Make sure this information is out there. I'll probably be expanding upon it later with another video. Again, I repeat, Jorge Camacho Rivera of Central Mexico is a piece of shit, insidious snake who sabotaged me, stabbed me in the back, pretended to be my friend so he could gather information on me and feed it to David and get me fired because it would help him. He could get more of his friends and family up here in jobs. He wanted his nephew Valenti and or his son to come up here and take my job. Oh, and David said, I need someone who can do the full job. And you can't ride. Valenti can't speak a fucking word of English. He was already bringing Valenti in to replace me when he fired me. Valenti doesn't speak English. Valenti will get someone killed out on that beach. Because how can he instruct anyone what to do if something goes wrong? And he seemed to have about as much riding experience as I do. And there's more we're going to get into about Valenti in another video. Some things I noticed about him having to do connections with the cult that I've been researching, like blue over red. I'll expand on that later. Also him fondling a lead rope for a horse behind my back in a way that's like, I turned around and caught him at it, and the horses did not like him. Like on a very core base level. Animals can tell if you're an insidious, evil piece of shit. I can make horses and animals, I can put them off a little bit, make them uneasy when I'm really anxious and upset about something. Then I recognize that and go like, I shouldn't be doing this right now. But typically my default mode with those horses was like, we were cool. There were two of them. I kind of had a little bit of like Willie, who gave everybody a problem, and then Faith, who would freak out once in a while if you walked up to her the wrong way. With her, at first, I didn't have any problem. And she freaked out on me once. The other horses, calm as cucumbers. Even the 3 new ones that have been brought in and weren't really ready to be taken out on rides, still being trained up. They can be very difficult. One of them cinched through me against a fence when I first started. But those 3 have even thrown Jorge, who's very experienced with horses. Even then, Cinch would snuggle and nuzzle me when I was mucking his stalls. And the other 2 new horses, Buck, who was the sick one that night, my cat went missing, and Butterscotch, used to follow me around like puppy dogs. And Waylon, I did really well with all those horses. They liked me, and they liked my very basic core person. You can see it if you know what to look for. If you have any experience with horses and animals, people who know what I'm talking about know. Animals know when a person's an evil piece of crap, don't they, guys? They know. They don't want to be around them. They want to go in the next room. It puts their hair on end. I don't like you. Something about you on a very basic level I don't like. You know, that's the kind of effect Valenti seemed to have on those horses. He caused Buck to freak the F out. Oh, and that was blamed on me by Jorge, I'm told. Elaine mentioned it as an issue while they were firing me. And then there was an issue where a horse got hurt recently. I'm sorry, you mean when Valenti was tacking up Buck, and Buck freaked out and gashed the side of his face open on a corner of a beam of his stall, and Valenti almost trying to jump out of there like a little Mexican hopping bean? And I was the one who started calming Buck down. Buck came over to me, finally, with his head down and let me start petting his head and calm him down. But somehow that incident got blamed. I wasn't even in the stall. I was standing outside of the stall watching Valenti tack a buck. And Jorge was standing right next to me. And Jorge just slapped some cream on Buck's very deep gash. And then went out on a ride. And just left it. Like that. I figured he'd come out back from the ride and deal with it more. I didn't know exactly what to do. And I figured that was like, Jorge has more experience with horses than I do. At least that's what I was told. So he must know what he's doing. I'm sure that cream he put on it is good enough for the ride while he's out on the ride, and he'll deal with it more when he gets back. And inform David or whoever needs to know. And I'm sure ask me for whatever help he might need. Oh yeah. Oh, I almost forgot to finish. So on Slack, there are all these messages from Jorge's phone saying it's from Jorge. No, but no, it's not from Jorge. It's from during the summer, this past summer of 2022, on Slack in the stables forum. It says, there are messages on there. I've got screenshots. It says that's from Jorge. Only Jorge wasn't on Slack in the summer because I helped him get on Slack this winter when I was working with him. It wasn't Jorge posting those messages. It was someone using his phone. So that was not Jorge's phone he was using. It was a phone that was given to him. And when it's a 252 phone number, registered to AT&T, and 252 is North Carolina. It's not Jorge's phone. That phone was given to him to be used for a period of time. So that does suggest, yeah, Jorge's telling the truth. That phone was lent to him by David. And David was likely using the fact that he lent Jorge his phone and the fact that Jorge is an illegal immigrant to press Jorge into helping him spy on American citizens. Although I don't know how much Jorge was being pressed into it, considering it could only benefit Jorge to have more jobs freed up at the ranch so he can have his nephew and son and so on brought in for those jobs. And they can all pack into the bunkhouse and, I don't know, sleep with each other, on top of each other, in each other, I don't know. Whatever, and receive less pay, and David will get open RV lots, and he'll get more money, and to hell with all the locals around there who are just as qualified to do most of those jobs and desperately need the money. That whole community's hard up for jobs and money. And David Saint Singh is basically giving them all the finger and bringing illegal immigrants in to pick up to do all the work and pushing out good employees, good U.S. citizen employees. I'm not the only one he pushed out. There's a beautiful family, wholesome, amazing family that lived and worked there too. The husband was a maintenance guy. The wife worked in the main office. They were promised a certain amount of hours when they came to work there, and the hours became fewer and fewer and fewer. And of course, like, what else could they do? They need to support their family. They had 3 boys and twins on the way. So I have some communication with them. And it also leads into how a lot of what Jorge was saying was very inconsistent. I'm going to make a video covering a lot of inconsistencies that Jorge was saying. Like, I'll give you one example, telling me not long ago that Mike had said to him he had all this extra work, extra projects, and that if I ever needed any extra hours, I should go ask Mike, the maintenance guy, if he had other projects to work on that I could help him on. And yet I was told by Mike the very day he left with his family that one of the main reasons they left is because he's not getting the hours he's promised and he needs to provide. So those poor people, that poor family was slowly pushed out. They were brought in to fill a gap of a certain period of time. And then David pushed them out with fewer and fewer hours. And I'm sure they're being replaced with a pack of illegal immigrants. And again, If there's superfluous work after you've given it to the qualified locals and citizens, by all means, give it to some immigrants. But there is no superfluous work around there. Everyone around there is really hard up for money and a way to feed their families. You're too cheap for your own good, David. Make sure you learn that. Oh, 45 freaking minutes. I gotta get back on the road. I just took a little break. Bye. There'll be more videos to come. Jackass. David, Saint Sing Snorkel's horse stick. Bye.